6th, 2012. Tonight I'll be chairing this meeting because our president, Bill Spingler, is out of town. Before we start the meeting, is there anyone who would like to participate from the public? Hi.
I'm Ann Albright. I'm here tonight in my capacity as secretary for the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township. Recently, the League passed a motion to support the passage of an anti-discrimination ordinance in Radnor Township. So I'm here tonight to read this statement into the minutes of your meeting. The League of Women Voters of Radnor Township supports the legal rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. The Radnor League of Women Voters therefore advocates that Radnor Township propose an anti-discrimination ordinance which prohibits discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations based on sexual identity or gender identification. The nearby townships of Lower Merion and Haverford have adopted such ordinances, as have the Delaware County boroughs of Swarthmore and Lansdowne, and the borough of Westchester. These townships and boroughs have established volunteer human relations commissions to enforce the ordinances. All residents of Radnor Township deserve equal dignity, respect, and protection under the law, and as supported by the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act. At the League meeting, there was some discussions believing that such an ordinance had already been proposed in Radnor Township, so I think this was intended to be, consider it a nudge. So I'm going to give these to your township manager, and also attached are the ordinances from Lansdowne and Swarthmore, if that would help you in your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, do you have an update from the Personnel Committee on that?
Well, the Personnel Committee did meet on this topic, I believe, twice. We heard comments from the public on this issue, and we basically, at this point, it has been requested of the solicitor to look into this and give guidance to us. But that's on a list, a very, very long list of items that the solicitor is looking at. So I think we'll ask John to take a look at that and advise the Board of Commissioners on the pros and cons of trying to establish this commission and also ordinance. But I think it's something we'll be looking at. So thank you.
Do we have more public comment?
Well, could I, did I hear you, Ann, talk about a commission? I want to make sure I know what the scope of your resolution is.
I think the reason that that was included is that for some of the communities that have passed this ordinance, they have developed a human relations commission as an advisory enforcing body to the way you use an ethics commission, so that if there is a complaint, that's the first place that it's heard. I don't know that that's necessarily something that has to happen, but I think...
But did your resolution advocate the establishment of a commission?
I think the resolution was worded in such a way to acknowledge that that was a common element for the townships that had passed this.
Okay.
That it's not in every
Well, we can
case,
still endorse this concept without going the extra step and saying we need a commission to start enforcing. This, what I heard is that we would endorse...
There was a resolution written.
Can I finish? I'm not quite finished.
Yeah, but it's...
What I heard was that we would endorse the concept of equal employment, equal housing, and public accommodations without discriminating against lesbian, gay, transsexual, transgender. That to me is a lot more important than setting up a commission.
Well, I think we'll get into this maybe under new business. I'll discuss this more. I think this is public comment now. But in general, we had a menu of options. We could do something like a resolution, taking a stand on the topic. We could pass an ordinance, and in the ordinance, we could choose to create an HRC to oversee the process. So we have choices. But a lot of this was still in the hands of our solicitor to give us advice pros and cons of each and every one of them.
All right.
Because clearly,
Well,
there would be
I don't know
costs.
that it's a legal matter for him, but I don't object to him looking at it. I think what's worth noting is that equal employment, equal opportunity in housing and public accommodations there may not be a movement at the federal level, at the state level, or at the county level, but we're at the grassroots, and it's worth noting that maybe this is where this sort of thing should get debated, and get debated now before the other levels of government look at it.
Dan?
Good evening. I'm Sarah Pilling from Garrett Hill, and one of the first coordinators for the Skunk Hollow Community Garden. I have two items. As per the direction of the township, I have a liability release from every gardener there, which I will give to John Rice for self-keeping. It's an original copy. And because I only know that Elaine Schaefer has been to the garden, I brought a series of photographs, which I hope, yes, which Jim will show, to just quickly tell you where we are. This was the second day after the first day, and they wouldn't go home. This is laying out the garden into a series of garden plots, 19 by 19, sort of like spiders doing a web. The following weekend, we rented 2 rototillers, and we rototilled the entire thing. The following weekend, we did a massive build with wood obtained at wholesale cost from Vincent Tegg. We built 102 raised beds in 4.5 hours. It was really amazing, and this is one of the beds. They're 4 feet by 16 that were built up on the driveway behind the mansion and carried down and placed. So now we look like a series of boxes, but the individual gardeners are working, and here's one of the garden plots planted. We're really very excited about it. We started out with 32 garden plots, and we're up to 41 because people are beginning to hear about it, or continuing to hear about it, and are continuing to come in. And it's very exciting, and the enthusiasm is unbelievable. They won't go home. They just keep working. So I wanted to update you.
Well, Sarah, I was out there, as you know, last week, and it was the middle of the week on a not very nice day, and there were 8 or 9 people out there working in the middle of a work day. So I do know that people are really enjoying it, and it looks tremendous. What a fabulous use for that land. I think we're all thrilled that you're doing this, and thank you for all the work you've done.
You're welcome.
Is there an opportunity are there any plots left at this point, or?
We could create 1 or 2 more. We're getting into a piece of the fenced area that's quite wet, and Greener Partners left black plastic on it, and it's almost impossible to get it up. So we've sort of set it aside for this year. We think there'll be shakeout, and that maybe some people who've really worked very hard will decide maybe they don't want to do this. So we already have a waiting list for next year.
Okay.
And this area where the plastic is, we're going to plant corn with beans and squash Indian style. And we have the lacrosse team coming next week to work for a day. We have 36 little boys from Haverford School coming in May. We have an Eagle Scout who wants to do his Eagle Project, building us a shed. And we have some seniors from Radnor Township are looking at making it a work project. So it's more than just the gardeners, it's other people coming in.
Great.
We will be having a mini gala in the garden, to which I know you'll all be invited.
Great, we'll be there. Thank you.
Sarah, I want to thank you too personally. As a 7th Ward Commissioner, your commissioner, I appreciate that not only did you get involved in the community garden in Garrett Hill, but you've raised the bar and gotten others mobilized and helped organize this. So thank you personally for your efforts here.
Well, it's really easy because everybody who's involved is really excited about gardening. There's no pushing or shoving. In fact, you have to hold them back.
Well, thank you.
Thank
And to
you.
all those that volunteer there.
Do we have any other public comment? All right, then. Next, I'd like to announce that we had an executive session immediately prior to this meeting on March 26th. All commissioners were present except for Bill Spingler and John Nagel, and we discussed matters of litigation, real estate, and personnel. Next, we have the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 12th, 2012, and March 19th, 2012?
I'll move to approve the minutes of March 12th.
You want to just do
You wanna
both at
do
once?
both? And March 19th.
Any second?
2012.
Second.
Any commissioner comment? Staff or public comment? I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. They are approved 5-0. Next, may I have a motion to accept our departmental reports?
I'll move to accept the departmental reports for February 2012.
Do we have a second?
Second. Second.
Okay, commissioner comment?
I have no comment.
I have a, did you say you have a comment, John?
I was going to ask staff if they had
Okay. I have a question for Bill. Am I understanding your report accurately that the difference between what you call full-year budget beginning and full-year budget amended is simply expenses that we committed to in 2011, but because we report on the cash basis, you push the numbers out for those expenses into 2012?
Yes, yes. The purchase orders that are entered that authorize those expenditures in 11 get carried forward into the current year if the purchase itself hasn't been completed. So if the board gave approval for certain purchases or they're under $3,000 and the manager approved them, and maybe the purchase was made but the bill hasn't come in yet, the purchase order gets carried forward. So
That's not again, we've had this conversation before, and it's probably more me than you, but that's not an amended budget.
No, it's not. In the truest sense, it's not. It's just the column heading was titled amended, and the spreadsheet's capturing those changes. Because what I wanted to do is make sure that the beginning budget reconciles to exactly what the board adopted.
Right.
So any changes from that point moving forward is going to be categorized in the amended column.
It would be helpful if you had an interim, because what I know you have it somewhere.
I do.
It's just not on this piece of paper, which is the middle column that tells me the difference between the two and why those differences are there. So if you could just address that going forward, if that's not too much extra effort.
I'll figure it out.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Bill.
I'll just make a brief comment. Last year I tried to highlight some of the departmental reports. The police department answered over 2,000 calls in the month of February, and the community development department processed over 150 permits. I don't have any other summaries at this point, but if you get a chance to look through this, it's quite amazing the volume of work that our departments handle. So many thanks to all staff and directors for making sure that these things get processed.
Yeah, if I could just pile on there, I noted that in the police department's monthly report, there's really some quite significant increases in traffic violations and parking meter violations in the last 2 months as compared to last year. And the patrol highlight report, it really reflects just a significant amount of work and a very interesting variety of incidents that our officers report to all month long. It's a good read if you are interested. So do we have any other commissioner comment? Any staff or public comment?
Well, just that the superintendent and his people have made 2 arrests of individuals allegedly responsible for robberies at the Wawa in the Bryn Mawr area. And I also read in your report that you're working hard on apprehending people that did the robbery at Robbins Jewelry at the Radnor Hotel.
Yeah, that's correct, Commissioner. In fact, they struck again over in Jersey, and our detectives are working with the detectives over in Jersey, Evesham, to be specific.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept these reports. I'm going to go ahead and call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The reports are accepted by a vote of 5-0. Next, we have the Historic Plaque Program for Commercial Properties presented by the Radnor Historical Society. And I believe we have some members of the Historical Society here.
Hi, my name is Andrea Pilling, and I'm a member of the board of the Radnor Historical Society, and I'm also one of the founders of the Historic Marker Program. And the reason that we're here tonight is just to update you about what we've been doing with the residential plaque program and to introduce the commercial plaque program for Radnor Township. So basically, we're going to expand the historic marker program to include not just residential buildings, but industrial, religious, and educational buildings as well. And right now, we are specifically targeting downtown Wayne and Garrett Hill because those areas contain an assortment of buildings which are very visible. So we have met with the board of with the Wayne Business Association and several of the owners, but we just want you to know about the program. After I give you just a really brief summary of the program, Greg Pritchard will show you a short visual presentation of the residential and commercial program buildings that have some of the buildings that have plaques thus far. To recap the program, we basically are distributing a 7 by 11 inch bronze plaque, which is on the TV monitor. It's a program that is conceived and administered solely by the Radnor Historical Society. It's a volunteer program only, and it has absolutely nothing to do with HARB. So the requirements are different and the guidelines are different. There are also no restrictions on paint color or exterior changes. The purpose of the commercial marker program in Wayne is to stimulate interest in downtown Wayne and in Garrett Hill and in its buildings, to encourage preservation of these resources, and to educate visitors about these architecturally important buildings and the wealth of historical resources. Historic preservation is good for these economies in terms of jobs, property values, environmental impact, tourism, social impact, and downtown revitalization. To summarize, I just want to read to you something that I came across which I think summarizes how the Radnor Historical Society feels about preservation and why these markers are important. While research on the economic impact of historic preservation is relatively recent, it was recognized decades ago by the Harvard economist John Kenneth Galbraith, who wrote, "The preservation movement has one great curiosity. There is never retrospective controversy or regret. Preservationists are the only people in the world who are invariably confirmed in their wisdom after the fact." So I just want to leave you with that. Maybe the presidential candidates should listen to that. But in any case, for more information about our program, people can visit radnorhistory.org/marker for guidelines and information. Greg Pritchard is going to give you a really brief
Can I
presentation.
just ask you a quick question?
Sure.
If the current owner puts it up, does the future owner have the ability to take it down? You said it's completely voluntary.
Oh, it's completely voluntary.
I wanted to make-
Absolutely. Yep.
Good evening. I just wanted to show you a few pictures of previous recipients of the plaques. On the screen now is a close-up. You've seen one of them physically, but this is the marker on the Thornhedge house, which is on Chamonix Road in St. David's. And that's the house from the street. The Finley House, which is the Historical Society's headquarters, also received one. This is Quintera on Church Road, I believe, which received one. Isle Field, which is on Conestoga Road in Villanova. This is the Nathan Matlack House on Darby Paoli Road. This is a house on West Wayne Avenue. One on Poplar Avenue in North Wayne. And Lenore Avenue in South Wayne, West Wayne area. So it's a wide variety of houses that have received them so far. They're all historically or architecturally significant, and this is the same kind of breadth of different kind of resources that we'd like to expand to the commercial area as well. And we are pleased to announce that our first commercial plaque will be going to the Suburban building in downtown Wayne, which is a recent renovation and very well done. And we're very pleased to have them as a customer. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I just want to express our gratitude, not just to the Historical Society, but to the homeowners and now the commercial landowners who go through the process of spending their time and their energy and a lot of money that I know it takes to keep up these old, beautiful buildings. And it really does a service for the rest of us in this community for them to donate their money and their time to safeguard our community, our cultural assets and our historical assets, and it benefits every last one of us in keeping this such a great place to live, and having those assets there is a big part of it. So thank you for encouraging it, and thank you to all the landowners who are working hard to make this program work.
Great. Thank you for having us tonight.
All right, next we have a motion to authorize several items to receive bids. Perhaps we should go through these, tick through them one by one. And Steve Norcini, are you the one who can explain each one of these things to us?
Yes, Commissioner Schaefer. The first one, fire protection, sprinkler system, and building code upgrades at the Willows Cottage and Mansion. So we'll be requesting bids for a contractor to provide the fire protection at both these buildings, as well as other code upgrades as outlined by our codes officials. Cleaning and repair of the underground stormwater management system at North Wayne Field. The underground stormwater management system at North Wayne Field has about a foot or two of silt and debris along the bottom of it. We were able to camera some of it. There's also a damaged pipe, so it's not functioning as it should. So the plan would be to have that cleaned and repaired properly and get it working back at the design level, the level it was designed at. The third is the roof replacement and building code upgrades at Sulpizio Gymnasium at the Radnor Activity Center. Again, the roof has had long-standing issues at the Sulpizio Gym, and there are electrical and plumbing upgrades to be done there, and this is strictly for code upgrades. Again, I'll be working with our codes department for what they have outlined. And I do apologize, but I received a letter late today from the Department of Environmental Protection about some shortcomings in our fueling system over at the Public Works Department. And the letter gave a hard timeline for these repairs to be made. So I spoke to the manager and finance director, and thought it best that I asked to have it on the agenda for tonight, even though the agenda had already come through, so that we can get the bidding process started and get these repairs done as quickly as possible. I did speak to DEP today. They would be willing to work with us on that timeline as long as they know that we are moving forward, and this would be the first step. So if the board would approve us, give us the authorization to receive bids, I will email DEP with a copy of this proposed legislation and let them know, Courtney Varance, that we are moving forward.
Okay.
I'll move to authorize Public Works to request authorization, to receive bids for the sprinkler system installation and code upgrades at the Willows Mansion and Cottage.
Do we have a second for that?
I'll second it.
Let me just ask, for both this one, the Willows Cottage, and for Sulpizio, while this bidding process is occurring, the buildings can still be used, right?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Okay. Do we have any other commissioner comment on that one? Any staff comment or public comment? All right, so let's go ahead and vote on the Willows portion of this. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Anyone want to move the second? Cleaning and repair of the underground?
Chair, I'll move that we authorize staff to receive bids for cleaning and repair of the underground stormwater management system at North Wayne Field.
Any
I'll
commissioner?
second it.
Any commissioner comment on that? Staff or public comment?
Yes, I would like to comment. The people in North Wayne are going to be very, very happy about this. I'll mark this as March 26th, Steve, the start of this Board of Commissioners getting its arms around the stormwater problems in the entire township. If we can get this system in the cistern to work in North Wayne Field, get the silt out of the bottom, and I'm so happy that you're going to be designing it in-house. Maybe we can call it the Norcini holding tank when it's all finished. But if we can get that tank, that cistern to work properly, that will be the start of helping control and attenuate the bad stormwater problems that we have in the township, at least that emanate from Gulf Creek. So I'm very happy to see this, and I'm very happy to second this motion.
Any other comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Somebody care to move for the roof replacement and building code for Sulphur?
I'll move to authorize Public Works to put out the bid, the roof replacement and building code upgrades to the Sulpizio Gymnasium and the Radnor Activity Center.
I'll second it.
At Radnor Activity Center.
Any commissioner comment? Staff or public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Next, we have collection of Act 511. Somebody want to make that motion?
I'll move the passage of a resolution authorizing our staff to solicit qualifications for the collection and administration of the township's Act 511 tax revenues.
Second.
I have a quick question about that one. So would a collection agency or whoever would do this job, would that include the legal work that goes along with that, or is that just collections?
Well, in establishing the RFPs, we'll be able to define a lot of that. As I understand it, the work that is outsourced is generally limited to simply the administration, the billing and collection. Any of the compliance end would still fall back on the township. But that's something as part of the overall process that we're taking a look at.
Okay.
Bill, for the edification of the public, could you explain what Act 511 is?
Sure. The Act 511 consists of several revenues that the township receives. It includes the realty transfer tax, which would not be part of what we're looking to do with this RFP. But it also includes the business privilege and mercantile taxes, as well as the local services tax and amusement tax. What would fall under what we're asking for here tonight would be the mercantile business privilege and local services tax. We would continue to do the amusement in-house because at this point it's basically just a handful of transactions per year. So we're primarily looking at business privilege, mercantile, and local services.
And business privilege is a tax on services, is it not? Whereas mercantile is a tax on goods?
Generally speaking, yes. On gross receipts, the gross receipts for both of those items, yeah.
Okay. And you also mentioned the amusement tax. Tell us what that is.
I'm a little less familiar on the legal side of that. I know that in looking at the transactions, I could tell you the taxpayers are and loosely define what the laws are surrounding it. I don't know off the top of my head.
But it's a particular class of vendors in the township?
Very, very specific class of vendors, which is why there's only 2 transactions or 2 taxpayers in the township.
Okay.
Any other commissioner comment? Staff or public?
Hi, Jim Schneller. I live in Wayne. I wanted to question whether the collection of Act 511 revenue could this feasibly be a step towards contracting this out? Because I'd like to express my alarm as a citizen that everything in the township seems to be getting contracted out.
I think that we're getting some more information to consider what's best for the township.
I'd like to, once again, register my objections and the fact that if this could be kept in-house in the long run, a lot of people would really enjoy it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Passes 5-0. And finally, would someone like to move to authorize?
Sure. I'll move that we
Qualifications?
authorize staff to receive bids to make repairs to the fueling facility at the Public Works Building.
Second?
Second it.
All right.
Second.
Any commissioner comment on this? Staff or public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, moving along to our committee reports. We'll start with Public Works and Engineering from Commissioner Jim Higgins.
I believe the first item is an award of a contract for the purchase of landscape mulch. This is bid number B12001. And Mr. Norcini, can you tell us what this is about?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Higgins. The Public Works Department annually goes to bid for mulch for the land to install in the landscaping beds at the township parks, municipal buildings, and other location maintained by the township. The bid is for 500 cubic yards delivered in the township. We did receive 3 bids, one from Mayfield Gardens, John Deere Landscapes, and Pennico Excavating. Mayfield Gardens was the lowest qualified bidder at $7,750, which equates to $15.50 per cubic yard. They provided the appropriate bonds for the bid. And the Public Works Department respectfully requests the award of the contract to the lowest qualified bidder, Mayfield Gardens, in the amount of $7,750.
And I'm assuming that this is less than we needed last year because of the school district.
That's correct. The amount was decreased due to the termination of that contract with the school district.
Okay, thanks.
Steve, why aren't we using our own mulch?
This is the dyed black mulch, if you will, that I guess is thought to be more aesthetically pleasing. It's more common that's used around here. We are looking at ways to start to use the tub grindings that we have. We've been placing the humus out in the parks. We'll probably start placing that. It does have a different look, considerably different look. If the board would like us to would direct us to start to use that, we could do some test areas and see how the board and/or public accept that.
Why don't we try it a few places and see if we get negative feedback?
Very good. We will do that.
It's the right price.
Yes.
All right, we need someone to move to approve this resolution.
I'll move the approval.
Second?
Second.
Any further commissioner comment? Any staff or public comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Next, we move on to Finance and Audit. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you. First up, we have Resolution 2012-40, the award, Schedule of Bills Payable Disbursement List 2012-3B in the amount of $1,370,518.34. This schedule these payments have been reviewed by the respective department heads, approved through the township purchase order process, and then verified and processed by the finance department. So I'll move to approve that.
We have a second?
Second.
Any commissioner comment? Any staff or public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Next up, we have a motion to approve, I'll move to approve the Business Privilege Tax Settlement Agreement BPT-01 in the amount of $30,000.
We have a second for that?
I'll second it.
And a brief comment, under Act 50, we're not allowed to disclose the taxpayers, so we cannot give any more detail publicly about this.
Do we have any commissioner comment?
Yeah, that's the right number, 30,000. I remembered it. Oh, okay, very good. That is the correct number, yes.
All right, public comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes 5-0.
Next up, we have Ordinance 2012-03, authorizing the incurrence of non-electoral general obligation bonds, Series 2012, in the amount not to exceed, I have on here $18,000, but I believe that's going to be modified, to finance the current refunding of the Township's general obligation bond, Series 2007, and also to pay the costs and expenses related to the issuance of the bonds. I believe we have the underwriter present from Scattergood, Michael Wolf, and also The bond counsel, do we have, from Cozen O'Connor, we have Susan Mays also. Would you like to come up and address this topic with us? And also, Bill, feel free to.
Sure.
Set us
As
up.
they make their way up, as a way of setting the table of the process we've been through, at previous meetings, the Board of Commissioners adopted resolutions appointing Boeing Scattergood as underwriter and Cozen O'Connor as bond counsel for this particular transaction. Since we last met or discussed this, the Township has been working with Michael on developing and updating the Township's official statement, as well as putting together a telephone conference with Moody's in an effort to get an updated rating for this transaction. At the same time, Suzanne and Cozen O'Connor were assisting in putting the legislation together that's in front of you tonight, as well as working with Michael on developing the bond purchase agreement and all the necessary legal documents that are associated with this transaction. The original plan, as we discussed when the resolutions were passed appointing these two companies to assist us, was that we would be here tonight with final numbers in terms of what the refunding looked like. However, due to some rather dramatic changes in the municipal bond rates, we decided to switch gears a little bit and develop a parameters ordinance, which is why the legislation reads up to a maximum of $18 million. And Michael will do a really good job of explaining how those different numbers reconcile. But as what we've done since the legislation was put together is there an opportunity this morning that if we could realize net present value savings in excess of 5%, that the timing seemed right to move forward with pricing the bonds. Being that, as Michael again will discuss here momentarily, municipal bond rates have been going up, and all indications seem to point towards them continuing to go up, which only diminishes the amount of potential savings that we would have. So if we were able to achieve greater than 5% net present value savings, we were going to move forward. At that point this morning, I also sent an email out to the members of the Citizens Audit Review Committee, and to the extent that they could, we did receive 5 responses back from those individuals saying that seemed like the right direction to go for the township, since interest rates were going up, that now was the time to pull the trigger rather than waiting much longer. So without further ado, Michael will step us through more of the specifics of the transaction and where we're at today.
Thank you very much, Bill. Again, my name is Michael Wolf from the firm of Benning & Scattergood, with headquarters in West Conshohocken, but I hope some of you recognize me as a Radnor resident, 32 years. And I've been looking forward to appearing before this board for a long time. This is my first official appearance before the board. I'm very excited, and I hope when I'm finished you'll be excited too. But there are 4 documents in front of you that are related to the bond issue. That's one more than usual. There's the bond purchase agreement. There's the addendum to the bond purchase agreement. There's a red document with red writing on it called the preliminary official statement. And finally, there's the ordinance that you're going to vote on. As Bill mentioned, we put in place a safety net that had to be good for a year and cover all possible contingencies of rising rates and different things that could happen over the year. And that's the $18 million. We don't need the safety net. So I'm going to speak to you tonight.
But why would you have made the safety net so big? That's your fees aren't anything close to $2 million, I hope.
Not at all, no. You stop me when I give you too much information, because this can be complicated. I'm fascinated by it, but I recognize that not everybody else finds this quite as exciting as I do. We have to create a safety net that'll work under all circumstances, and the Department of Community and Economic Development requires that we put in place a set of numbers not to exceed, and we have to put a safety margin on every one of 26 maturities. So if we only put $100,000 on each one of those maturities, that would be $2.6 million right there. And as you will see in a minute, we didn't need any of the safety margin, and you won't pay for any of those bonds that were in the safety margin. But we did come close on a couple of the maturities, and I'm glad that we made them as big as we did. The bonds we're refunding, the series of 2007, are a little bit unusual. I don't know if you remember the series from 2007. It was new money at the time for capital projects. It's a very deep wraparound with all of the principal coming due at the very end. And that limits our ability to provide you with savings and puts a lot of emphasis on the interest rates in those last few years where all the bonds are concentrated.
What is the end date, Michael?
They go out to 2037.
Okay.
And they still go out to 2037, and they haven't been extended, but the interest rate has been lowered. Okay? So we've been working as hard as we can work with the help of the staff, and we've been getting wonderful support for the past 9 weeks. But for 7 of those 9 weeks, interest rates gradually and painfully and little by little increased. And that's what put a scare into us that we may not be ready tonight with savings that were attractive. And that's why we constructed the safety net, which is becoming more and more useful in situations like this. If, for example, we had not been able to deliver the savings tonight, we would have had to re-advertise the meeting after 30 days and keep re-advertising and trying to hit the window. The parameters ordinance holds that window open for up to a year. I think maybe now, Bill, if you could show the first graph while I continue to discuss the savings. We have a couple visual aids that may assist. So even though interest rates, let's go one more. Even though interest rates have risen for 7 of the past 9 weeks, we had an opportunity this morning to execute the sale and on very good terms. You can see there on February the 9th, interest rates were, this is a 20 bond average, 3.60. That's the lowest they've been.
Is a 20 bond a 20-year bond?
It's 20 bonds that are 20 years long. So it's 20 high-quality AA bonds maturing in 20 years. And it's called the 20 bond index, and it's a nationally used quick rule of thumb. That low point, that 3.60% occurring in early February, was the lowest we've seen since 1967. So even though rates have moved up a full 41 basis points, or 0.41 of 1%, they're still relatively attractive, as you will see. There's 3 things that you need to refinance bonds. You need a preliminary official statement, which describes the township in very great detail and is distributed to potential bondholders, and you have that in front of you with red ink on the cover. We updated it from its last version 2 years ago. I think it's better than it was. I recommend it to you. It has a very lot of detail about economic and demographic information related to the township. The second thing you need is a Moody's rating, and the preliminary official statement and the audits of the township provide the most important input to Moody's. Attached to the thin document, at the back of the thin document, is 6 pages of the Moody's rating. I, again, encourage you at your leisure to read through the important pages. A couple of pages are nothing but disclosure. This is a AA1 rating from Moody's. Can you go back one slide? You see a AA1 rating is the second highest of 10 investment grade ratings. And this is really something for the township to be proud of, and so I think I'll just read a couple of sentences from the first page. The AA1 rating reflects the township's large and affluent tax base, satisfactory financial position, and moderate debt burden. Proceeds from the current issue will be used to refund the township's Series 2007 bonds. Strengths: stable tax base with above average wealth levels, satisfactory financial position. Moody's believes the township's diverse $4.9 billion tax base will remain stable. Moody's expects the township to retain its healthy financial position due to management's stated commitment to adjust future budgets in line with revenues. And Moody's expects the debt burden to remain manageable, despite a slow amortization schedule. That's a wonderful report card Yeah, if it was your children, you'd be very, very proud. I appreciate the help that I received from the staff during the conference call, because they had answers to every question that Moody's could pose. And I know that Moody's reputation has been tarnished in recent years, but they're still the best we have. And they talk to townships every day, and they know good from bad, and they say you're good. So this is a strong township, and I'm going to speak to that.
Can I just add on to your comments about Moody's? I mean, I was anxiously awaiting to see this rating because, for those of you who read the financial the section of the paper, Moody's has not been shy about downgrading municipalities in our region. They have downgraded Haverford, Reading, Westtown, Bucks County, Collingswood, New Jersey. In fact, they stated that at the end of 2011, they downgraded 5 times as many municipalities as they boosted. So maintaining our AA1 rating with positive narrative is fabulous, and we should all be very comforted by this rating. Sorry for the interruption.
No, it's welcome. All right, so we have our POS. We have our Moody's rating. We also need attractive interest rates, which we were worried about. And, you know, the other thing is when interest rates get to the 47-year low, every bond issue in Pennsylvania floods into the market and competes with you for the attention of investors. And that's what happened last week. The market was totally clogged, and a lot of people got pushed to the sidelines. But this morning, the calendar was pretty clear. There are issues coming later this week, but today you had bonds for sale where nobody else did, and that's all it takes. The other thing is you had the AA1, and there aren't very many AAAs around, so AA1 is awfully good in Pennsylvania. So it's a little bit like refinancing a mortgage. And so if you look at the last slide I have, you see two lines. The blue lines at the top are the interest rate you've been paying and are scheduled to continue to pay from now until 2037 on the 2007 bonds. The average remaining interest rate on the blue line is about 4.5%. The red line are the line representing the interest rates that you got this morning. The average rate on those is 3.99%. The difference between the red and the blue represents the savings to the township. There's a giant difference between the lines in the beginning. Unfortunately, there are no bonds in the beginning. All the bonds are way, way out at the end. That's the way they were issued in 2007, and there's not too much we can do about it. But we are still realizing savings, even though the principal is an extreme wraparound with the old 2007 bonds were pushed out there to pay principal when other issues were already paid off. It's very common practice in municipal finance to do that. It just makes it a little harder for me when it's time to refinance. But the big news for tonight is inside the white box. The net present value savings, after all the smoke cleared today, is $991,325, or 6.239%. GFOA recommends to municipal finance directors that anything over 3% is worth pursuing. Not only that, this is a current refunding of the 2007 bonds. That is, this does not constitute your one bite of the apple that you're allowed because it's not an advance refunding before the call date. I told you this was going to get dry, but the 2007 bonds are callable May 1st, 2012, and we're calling them May 4th, 2012, 4 days after they are allowed to be called. So you retain your opportunity for this set of bonds, for this particular set of capital projects. You still get one chance to refund before the call date on these new bonds. The call date on these new bonds is December 1st, 2022, 10 years from now.
So we could
you could refund these
after
bonds
December 2022.
once before. You still have one time you're allowed, anytime, one time before 2022. So we're not using up your one bite of the apple. Anytime.
So theoretically, I could do it next week.
You could, but
I understand. I just want to make sure I understood.
But You can't get rid of the people before the call. You must pay them out through the call in 2022. Again, there are not that many bonds, but you must satisfy those people. So the only thing you can do when you advance refund is take the new bond proceeds and put them into an irrevocable escrow invested in treasuries. Right now, treasuries are near zero, and so there's a tremendous negative carry on that escrow by doing an advance refunding. So until things turn around with respect to treasury rates, don't count on an advance refunding of these 2012 bonds. Okay.
Madam Chairman, if I could, just real quickly, over here. We made copies for those who are in the audience tonight, if you wish to have a copy of the bond purchase agreement and the addendum as Michael steps through this. It was put together today, so the information is available now for anyone who's in the public. So I just wanted to say that now.
Almost finished. Thank you for your patience. Again, working our way toward the front of the thin booklet, I'm now going to look at Exhibit A5. A5 shows the old debt service in dollars. It shows the new debt service, and shows the savings year by year. The savings year by year add up to more than $1.5 million, but we have to present value that back to today's dollars, and the convention is that we use 3.991 your weighted average interest rate on the new bonds. And that's why the 1.5 present values back to 991. This is where I wanted to remind you or tell you for the first time that I've never been able to say this before at a meeting like this, and I've been doing this for 26 years. These bonds were heavily supported by investment firms from Radnor Township. We had orders for half of the bonds from a couple of firms that are located right here in the township. And their stated reason for being interested today, of all days, was that they don't get a chance to buy Radnor bonds very often. And that was gratifying to hear, and of course, that goes along with the AA1 rating. Now, they didn't get all the bonds they wanted, because it's our job to pick and choose who gets them, and we're trying to give you the very, very best rates that we can. But they got a lot of the bonds, and they got them at what they think were good rates, and they may not get another chance until you do something again in the future.
I'm a little confused about what happened this morning. So have we...
You're locked.
We're already locked.
You'll be locked as soon as you vote.
Oh, all right.
We saw an opportunity, and in...
So, Mike, your letter here, the one that's got Bill Spengler's name at the top.
Right.
You're talking here about...
Well, there's two letters with Bill Spengler's name at the top,
Right.
just to make it a little confusing.
This is the addendum.
Right.
You're saying here that on March 26, Benning and Scattergood, acting on its own behalf,
That's right.
entered into a bond purchase agreement for the purchase of $18 million,
That's right.
with Radnor Township being the issuer. And then you say the bond purchase agreement and the issuance of the bonds were approved and authorized by the issuer under an ordinance adopted March 26. So this sounds like a dumb question, but it sounds like things are getting ahead of themselves here.
I think maybe it's time
This is very typical. It's
Step over
completely
here.
typical. I'm Suzanne Mays. I'm with Cozen O'Connor. Underwriters generally price bonds the morning of a meeting of the governmental entity. They then bring documents that are dated for that date to the meeting. They understand that they are at risk until the governing body deliberates, understands the transaction, and then decides to authorize it pursuant to the legal action, which is the bond ordinance, at which time the contracts get signed. If the Township decided tonight that it did not want to authorize this deal, then there would be no sale of the bonds. But this is absolutely typical and standard in the industry. Michael is not suggesting that he's that you've already agreed to something you haven't agreed to. But in order to hold the transactions and hopefully have buyers take the bonds, the idea is that as quickly as possible after he's able to get pricing indications, he brings that to the township for the township's consideration and vote.
Why wouldn't the firm get our authorization and the ordinance passed tonight and then tomorrow morning go through this?
It's just not how it's typically done in the order that we're describing to you.
It doesn't attract the buyers as well as...
The market is so volatile, and right now we're even in a more volatile situation, that the typical order of doing it is to, quote, price the bonds to get the offer. In other words, Michael doesn't have anything to offer to you until he goes into the market and sees what the market appetite is. That's what Benning and Scattergood did today, and then he brings you that offer. And that's what's embodied. The confusing part here is what your finance director and Mr. Wolf were alluding to, which is that originally we were going to come in this evening. Benning and Scattergood would have done the same thing this morning. They would have gone out to the market, and we would have brought a specific issue, a specific offer, and the ordinance in front of you would have had a principal amount that matched exactly what was needed in order to do that deal. Last week, the market backed up horribly, and the fear was that there wouldn't be a deal to offer to the township tonight, and that the most prudent thing for the township to do was to enact a parameters ordinance, as he alluded to. So we went in that direction. We talked with staff, and just by the way, Cozen O'Connor does a lot of bond counsel work, and that's very typical to do what's called a parameters ordinance. The market improved, I guess, Thursday into Friday dramatically, and
Not even dramatic, just enough.
Enough that instead of 3% savings, you were looking at over 6% savings. So we left the parameters ordinance arrangement in place for your consideration tonight. But I think to the township's benefit, instead of waiting for some time, some unknown time in the future to execute the addendum to the purchase agreement and get the specifics of the transaction you're going to enter into, Benning thought the time was right, and they were actually able to bring a deal to the township. So although you're being requested to consider a parameters ordinance, at the same time you signify, if you do, your willingness to vote affirmatively for that ordinance, you actually know the deal you're getting tonight with respect to your savings. Contrast that with if the market hadn't improved, we would have brought the same ordinance to you, and you would have delegated to your township manager and finance director to pull the trigger at a point that savings were in excess of 3%. So we apologize. It is a little more confusing than typical. But I, in my opinion, and of course I defer to your solicitor, I see nothing out of order in terms of how it's being brought to the township.
The reason I have to stick with the parameters ordinance is because of advertising requirements, John. Why couldn't I just approve what was theoretically issued?
I'm sorry, Kevin, I didn't hear the beginning of your question.
Do I have to approve the parameters ordinance? I mean, in the absence of the advertising requirement, I would rather just approve what was proposed this morning. But I think I can't do that because I have an advertising requirement for the resolution.
Well, there's a 3-day advertising requirement for any ordinance under the Unit Debt Act. Parameters ordinance gives you the flexibility to do what just happened.
But I can't approve what happened this morning because I don't meet the 3-day advertising requirement.
That's right.
Okay.
I mean,
Right.
theoretically, we could have done a massive amendment of the ordinance, but just to give you some comfort, and I understand the concern, this ordinance only authorizes the issuance of bonds to refinance the 07 bonds. It's not broad in terms of purpose. With the financing that Michael has outlined, you are refinancing all of the 07 bonds. So there is no ability to issue any of the additional principal amount that rests in this ordinance because there's nothing to use the proceeds for. So just so that you're protected in that sense. Sure.
I told you this was going to be a little more complicated than usual, but Kevin, I think this would have been crystal clear if we had brought you the parameters one day, dated March 26th, and Jim, and then 2 weeks later, we would have brought back an addendum dated 2 weeks later. It's kind of a coincidence that we were able to catch up to ourselves and make them both March 26th. If they were 2 weeks apart, it would all be much simpler. And
You're getting me there.
Are you with me?
I'm with you,
Okay.
and you're getting me there. I
So-
feel a lot better than I did 10 minutes ago.
All right.
So I'm assuming since you're doing this both tonight, you feel that this is the best deal that we can get and interest rates are either going to go up or not get any lower.
Well, we can't know that. That's why GFOA tells people to set a 3% or have a target in mind. We are doubling the GFOA target.
And what, you said you had reached out to Carfax today, Bill? And
That is correct.
And they felt comfortable that this was a good time to?
Yeah, to the extent the members could respond, I think we got 5 responses, and they all said either yes, it seemed like the right way to go, or they defer judgment back to the township. So.
The truth is, if you go back to the one graph with the red dots, we don't know where interest rates are going in the future, but we know what we have in hand. If rates keep going up, we'll be awfully glad we did this. If rates go back to the 47-year low, we'll wish we had been a little more greedy. But given that it's my township and I'm a resident, I'm swayed by the fact that I don't want any more of the savings to slip away.
Can you give us any guidance on why the interest rates for municipalities had gone up in the last
9 weeks, 7 weeks.
Yeah, 9 weeks or so. I remember hearing it in the news, reading something, and I just don't recall what it was.
You know, I could tell you anything. They say rates got so low that there was a boycott. People said, we're not buying bonds at these levels. Then other people say, well, treasuries ticked up a little bit because of the hint of economic recovery. You know, worries about possibly inflation going along with economic recovery. But the truth is we really probably won't know why interest rates ticked up for another 3 or 4 months, if then. All we know is we tried to hit the very bottom. We didn't quite do it, but it's pretty respectable. And I told Bill White today that although I wanted to hit a grand slam home run and be the one who won the game, I'll settle for a stand-up triple and let someone else RBI me in. So I view this as a stand-up triple.
Mike, I have just a couple more questions. Is this accurate that the actual principal amount that's being issued is $16,360,000? That's on the cover of what is identified as
Yeah, it
the
is.
addendum?
And I think I should take you through one more exhibit, if you don't
Okay,
mind.
I can wait to ask the rest of them then. That's fine.
The last exhibit I'm going to talk to you about is Exhibit A4. And that shows that the principal amount of bonds was $16,360,000, as Kevin was just talking about. Almost all of that was needed as a deposit to the current refunding fund needed on May the 4th, $15,895. You paid total costs of issuance of $106,000 for the underwriter's discount. I think that's less than you've ever paid. And total cost of issuance, other costs, fixed costs of $44,000. The sum of those two together is less than 1%. And that's as a result of your professionals sharpening their pencils to a point that hasn't been sharpened in recent past. And I think I should thank the professionals for their diligence and their ability to work for a tight price. That includes everybody on the team. And all that money that's not spent on professionals goes to savings.
It's the 311, the 312?
That's called original issue discount. That's a
Explain,
whole
I have an idea what it is, but explain it in English.
You'll be sorry you asked.
That's not all right.
Okay. The only way I know to explain original issue discount of $311,000 is to show you Exhibit A1.
What document are you in?
I'm still in the same document, the thin document.
The addendum?
The addendum. Still in Addendum A1. Okay. Some of the people paid 100 cents on the dollar for their bonds. Actually, not very many. Only the people in 2015. The people before them paid more than 100 cents on the dollar, and everybody after them paid 98 or 97 cents on the dollar. The people who were given that concession of being able to buy bonds at less than 100 cents on the dollar, the total amount of all of those concessions on all of those bonds added up to $311,000.
And that's a function of the fact that the stated coupon rate is below the rate in the market today.
Yes, and it reflects the belief by buyers that if they want to sell, there's room for them to mark them up and still have them be less than par. Nobody I speak to ever understands that, but That's my best explanation. That about concludes the part of my presentation, and I'm sorry it has lasted about twice as long as it usually does, but I can't help it because the news is all good. I think I should pause here, ask you if you have any, sort of technical questions for me. I'll do my very best, but normally the next thing you would do would be hear from bond counsel regarding the ordinance.
I just want to make sure, actually, a question for John Rice. Typically, an ordinance, we would introduce, and then we would be able to act on that, I think it's a certain period of time. In this case, this ordinance 2012-03, are we able to act on this tonight, in your opinion?
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
you authorized at the last meeting the
Yes.
advertisement. The Unit Debt Act has a special advertising, 3-day advertising, and then tonight, assuming you adopt this, it has to be advertised again, that it was adopted tonight and with any changes to it. So that preempts or supplants what you would find in your charter, your other codes in terms of advertising.
Okay, and so in addition to, and honestly, I haven't gotten a chance to read, since some of this was given to us before, but these newer documents were just given to us. Do we, Mr. Rice, would we, in addition to approving this ordinance 2012-03, which sets the parameter ordinance, do we want to also vote on a resolution approving this issuance of bonds? Is that something we need to do in addition to, or?
Go ahead.
Because we have a specific, in this case, we actually have the bonds in front of us, so.
That's right. So, and the answer to that is that you do not need to do it, because in this ordinance itself, in section 13, at the end of section 13, there's an authorization to the township manager or the director of finance to accept the addendum to the bond purchase agreement, which is the thin document that Mr. Wolf has been speaking about, which is the specifics of the actual deal. So the way parameters ordinances work, there's always a delegation, assuming the board is comfortable with it, so that you don't have to reconvene if the deal that's presented meets a variety of parameters that are set forth within this document. It can then be executed. I'm happy to just.
No, that answers my question.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that we
You
didn't
didn't
leave
need a
here tonight.
second action.
And realize we forgot
No,
to actually
we
approve it.
appreciate that. That's a great question. So let me just, as quickly as you'd like, take you through the.
Before you do that, I want to make sure, Kevin Higgins asked a question at the beginning, Mike, about the $18 million versus what we currently are indebted for. And I'm not sure, Kevin, did you get the answers?
Yeah, basically, they're issuing the bonds for $16,360,000. They didn't know what it was going to be, and then when he hit me with the fact that it's essentially 26 individual bonds, and they have to
Each
put
with a safety margin.
Right, they have to put. That's why it made some sense when you answered the question there.
I appreciate the flexibility of the board in allowing us to construct a safety net that would be good for a year, and I'm pleased we didn't need it.
Jim, what I think you really want to look at is what Michael just walked us through, which was page A4 of the document entitled Addendum to the Bond Purchase Agreement. If you take the 311,953, the 106,340, the 44,000, and the 1,788, you come down to what's the outstanding principal of the 15.9. That's the 15.9 million of the 2007 bonds that are outstanding. His fee is $100,000. I guess the lawyer's fees, printing costs, and all those other things are $44,000. And in order to match the coupon with the actual yield in the marketplace, sometimes you have to take a little bit less principal, sometimes you have to take a little bit more principal. So if it says, the coupon says 2, and the interest rate is 2.1 today, somebody's going to pay a little bit less to drive that interest rate from 2 to 2.1. And the aggregate of all those pieces, which he showed us on a different page, added up to 311 that drove up the principal. So that's why it's a little bit higher than
And
the 15.
some of the buyers wanted 5 coupons on the long end. And that's where we got our help from the local institutions, because
What does that mean, Mike? 5 coupons on the long end? Sorry.
I'm really embarrassed to take so much time, but on the very big bonds, on the long
Michael, you
end-
shouldn't be. You know why? Because for too long, these kind of questions weren't asked.
That's true.
And
I
there's
know
a
that's
lot of
true.
things.
If you look at page A1, there were $8 million worth of bonds due in 2037. A lot of the big institutions, your Vanguards, your Franklin Funds, and people like that, they wanted a 5 coupon at a 4.12 to protect them for 30 years against what they view as being nothing but increasing rates. That would have killed the deal for you. We had to keep digging and digging until we found customers who would take 4s at a 4.12 to produce the savings that you wanted. So what I'm saying is, if we had taken the easy way out and taken the people who wanted the 5s, that negative 300,000 that Kevin was talking about would have been positive 300,000. You would have had fewer bonds, but you would have had no deal. You would have had no savings. So this was one of the more interest rate sensitive refundings I've ever worked on, because of so much bonds being out so long. A small change of 5 basis points made a difference of more than $100,000 of savings.
And you started working on this just last night, right?
Well, actually, no. We mailed the POS last
Kidding.
week. We were working on people all last week. We were getting really decent levels of interest before the weekend. And so I was hoping all weekend that nothing would go wrong in Greece, Portugal, Ireland, or Spain, because even that can infect our markets. And we got through the weekend okay, and there was strong interest this morning. We still have a lot of the short bonds, but we'll work them off. We're taking them into our inventory at our own risk. And in answer to your question a few minutes ago, Jim, we couldn't bring, unless we had firm orders from customers in hand, we couldn't come tonight and quote you a rate that we knew. We couldn't come to you with an offer and then go out and see how well we could do. We have to go out and see how well we can do and then bring it to you and see if you'll accept it. So it's a little bit backwards from what you might think makes sense, but it's the way it's been done for 50 years, and it's about the only way we know how.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Can you just elaborate on the last little thing you said there about how you couldn't sell the short ones, so you're buying them yourselves?
Yeah.
And so what price do you pay, what price do you buy them at? I mean,
We're buying them at the rates shown on A1. We're taking those small maturities into our inventory, and we're going to ask our local stockbrokers in Pittsburgh, in Lancaster, Ohio, and other places, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and other places, to see if their retail customers will take these small pieces.
but you've configured a price that you're paying, and then
And
if you
you're-
don't get that price, you'll take the risk. If you get more, you take the gain?
Right, it's called the underwriter's risk, and we're supposed to take some underwriter's risk on your behalf. And that's part of the fee that we charge. I think I have one more thing I owe you as an explanation, and that is that we're doing this a different way this time than you did it last time. You're not paying an independent financial advisor. As a result, you're also not paying about $33,000 in fees that you would normally be associated. So even though I was very annoying to your staff, they were very helpful to me, it's all to a good cause.
Well, I think they brought that concept to us about 2 meetings ago.
Okay.
And we approved it.
Very good.
Okay.
All right, at this point, I'll move to adopt.
She has a presentation to make.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Suzanne, right?
Yeah, I'll try to be very
I
brief
just
because
wanted
I
to get
know
the
this
question on the
is.
table.
Okay, well, go ahead then.
Yeah, from,
Lane, what's the rule?
You can go ahead and we can
Yeah.
move and.
yeah, I just move in
Second.
second, then we'll move on. So I'll move to adopt ordinance 2012-03, authorizing the incurrence of non-electoral general obligation bonds, Series 2012, in the amount not to exceed $18 million to finance the current refunding of the Township's general obligation bonds, Series 2007, and to pay the costs and expenses related to the issuance of the bonds.
Second?
I will second it. I have a very, very small amendment. I won't mention it now, but after Suzanne makes her presentation.
And I think your solicitor mentioned that to me, and it's the reference to treasurer.
Yes.
Which, absolutely fine. We'll strike
Okay.
that throughout. My apologies. I did not
You
realize.
even, yeah, you have our treasurer giving him more authority, the office has more authority than he has under our charter, and then you also have the office of assistant treasurer referred to, and we have no such thing.
That's fine. So we'll strike that, and the reference will just be to the secretary in those places,
Please.
or,
Thank
okay?
you.
And tomorrow morning, we'll send over a revised draft that strikes the references to the treasurer and the assistant
So
treasurer.
my
Okay,
amendment,
why don't you make it
Commissioner
the-
Fisher, is to simply, in Articles 4, 17, and 22,
Mm-hmm.
delete reference to treasurer, and assistant treasurer.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay. So I will give you the 30-second description, and if you want more, I'm happy to do it. The ordinance, as you all know, is the legal action by which you authorize the incurrence of the debt and the other documents that surround the transaction, including the bond purchase agreement and then that delegation for the addendum. So it goes section by section. It describes the project, which is the refinancing of the 07 bonds. It authorizes the issuance of the bonds. It states that they are general obligation bonds of the township to which the full faith credit and taxing power of the township is pledged. There's a form of the bonds included. There are specifics around the terms of the bonds and the, quote, parameters, which we are well within, had you needed for that to play out over time. There are provisions that provide for the redemption of these bonds, and Mr. Wolf has explained those as well. There's a creation of a sinking fund into which you'll make deposits to pay for the debt service on these bonds over time. There's authorization to redeem the 07 bonds on or about May 4th. So you will close on the new bonds and pay off your 07 bonds at the same time. There are references to federal tax covenants that you make in order that the interest on the bonds is excluded from gross income for federal income tax purposes, which is why you get the great low rates that you get. So they are the highlights of the authorization, but essentially you are authorizing the debt with the ordinance. Any questions?
Is the purpose of the sinking fund to protect the bondholder?
Yes.
To make sure that the money goes
Yes, once
to a safe place
deposited,
and then?
it's there. No, you don't have to deposit it but much before it's due, but once it's there, it's held for the benefit of the bondholders.
Okay.
That's correct.
I have one question about Exhibit A.
Yes.
Some of the information is not there, so when does that information, when is that inserted, and
Sure.
is that appropriate for us to agree to something where the information?
Yes, it's a form of a bond. Again, because it's a parameters resolution, you don't have every specific, so it is very normal for there to be some blanks. Those will be filled in connection with delivering the bonds to the underwriters. Good
And then
question.
I would understand that the substance that would go into that section would be in the
That
addendum
is-
that we're approving tonight.
That's correct. So, for example, your original issuance date, which we show as a blank, would be May 4th, 2012. But we wouldn't have put that in here because what we did was we tried to stay true to the nature of this ordinance as a parameters ordinance, even though by the end of the day we knew how it would play itself out. Would have been a little schizophrenic to put some of that in and then say it was a parameters ordinance. Okay? Are there any other questions? Thank you for your time.
Just want to reiterate a point that was made earlier, probably got lost. The purpose of this refunding is to reduce our borrowing expense. As a result of this refunding, we will recognize, or should recognize, a $991,325.07 net present value benefit over the term of the bonds, and this represents about a 6.239% savings on the $15,890,000 of the principal.
I'm glad you did that. It's good to reiterate the whole purpose of this.
All right, so we
The other
have,
key fact is that the duration, well, I don't want to use duration because that has a specific, that we're not extending the back end of it. So
Good point.
still 27.
it ends at 2037 now, and it ended at 2007, ended at 2037.
Okay, we have an amended motion on the table. Is there any more commissioner comment at this point? Is there any staff comment? Do we have any public comment? Okay, let's call, oh, we do.
Martin Heldring, 305 Audubon Avenue. I just have first of all, I applaud this effort. Obviously, taking advantage of interest rates when they're at cyclical lows is a good idea. Hard to quibble with it. But just a couple of questions. The NPV of 6.23%, I assume includes all fees associated with this. I listened, I didn't hear that, but I just assume that has to be the case. It does. Okay. Does anybody know what the original purpose of the 2007 series was? We've spoken many times about Radnor having a history of long-term financing of short-term assets. And the only thing I can think of for that dollar amount is this building. Is that what this was?
Yes, generally speaking, that's accurate.
Okay. I think it's a good idea always to have metrics to measure everything. I'm sure Mr. Wolf's firm is doing a good job, but I monitor prime rate, I monitor LIBOR, I monitor treasuries. I've not seen an increase commensurate with what's going on in the muni market. And maybe that's technical. Maybe it has to do with some of the munis in the country that are having difficulty. I don't know. I don't follow it. But I would think it's a good idea for the township management to report back to the board about what happens to interest rates in a couple of weeks over that time period, just to see. I mean, you can't get greedy. But on the other hand, it's good to know at what point you hit. And if rates kept going down and all of a sudden you would have been looking at an NPV of 10%, I hope Mr. Wolf would come back. And you can't predict the future, but I think it'd be good to talk to us about it. I have a question with regard to Moody's. Was the, congratulations, by the way, but was unfunded pension liabilities and health care costs at any point part of that conversation?
Yes, they were, in full detail. And they had a specific portion of our conversation with Moody's covered that, and they had access of our audited financial statements in front of them during the conversation.
They cited as challenges.
They cited challenges. So with regard to that challenge, I did a little bit. We talked about the 7.5% investment rate that's implicit in your budget, and I queried that at the meeting, and then the representative from the firm as to how they came up with that, and there really was no good explanation. I did note, as I looked around, that there's quite a few people that have dropped from 8.5 to 8 to 7.5 with no fundamental analysis of whether that's appropriate. I walked you through what it means if it ends up at being 5 and 4, how much it grows. I will point out that Rhode Island, last year's investment return was 0.5%. So I don't know if Moody's is asking those kind of questions. But I think the board should really have a very good understanding of why they're choosing 7.5% as an investment return and what that means and what will happen if it ends up at 5 or 4 or 3. And I would hope there'd be some metric that the board could look at to say, over 10 years, if we had put it in a Vanguard widely diversified stock fund, we would have actually earned 7.5. Because if you can't point to a metric like that, then I wonder how you can choose that rate. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? All right, any other commissioner comment before we vote? All right, I'll call the vote. This is on the motion as amended by Jim's amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. It passes 5-0. All right, next we have Personnel and Administration, Commissioner Kevin Higgins. All right. It's the easiest.
The only item on the agenda is Resolution 2012-39 regarding the realignment of the magisterial district for Radnor Township, and the resolution is to oppose that proposed realignment. Bob, do you want to walk us through why that makes sense? You had a nice little explanation as to not only, qualitative issues, but you alluded to quantitative issues, how it's going to cost us money.
Sure. What the state has proposed is a reestablishment plan for the district justices and the district courts, which would actually take us where we have 2 currently serving the township. It would take us down to 1. So not only would there be an impact to the residents of this, but a real big burden would be upon our police department and the travel time for us to go to the district court now, which, knowing right now currently where we're at with staffing with police, but also to take our officers out of the area and additional times for waiting, depending on how the courts would work, would put an undue burden upon the township here to take officers out of the township to go to these courts. The district justices have done fine, have done well for the township here. I understand previously, too, there was even further, there was a reduction down, a remapping of this prior to my time being here. But I think this will put an undue burden upon the township, and I really think it goes down to the police department. And some of the input we have into this resolution came directly from our police officers and from the superintendent. So this is something what we'd like to do is actually, as the township, put an objection into the state legislature that this is not a good idea, and if they've considered the undue burden that they'll place upon the township, especially in the area of the police department.
Thank you. So I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2012-39.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any other commissioner comment? Any other staff comment? Public comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Next, we move on to community development. Commissioner Curley.
The first item is Resolution 2012-41, authorizing a part-time third-party code inspection service by Keystone Municipal Service. So will you give us some background on this?
Sure. Good evening. As we discussed at your last special meeting, that we were seeing a general uptick in the amount of permit activity. And while our staff has been doing an excellent job in working through that level, we're starting to see a backlog now in the response times to do inspections, as well as delayed times in getting the reviews done as we're required to. So what we're asking is to bring Keystone in, who had been here last year to help assist with some of the burden later on in the year, to bring them in while we look at and explore other long-term solutions. So the motion in front of you is to bring Keystone Municipal Services back in on an as-needed basis at the rate that they had charged us last year, to get us through this period until we can look at a more long-term solution.
So, and we haven't budgeted for this, but we'll see increases in revenue from the activities
Correct.
that are driving this.
Correct. We had looked at just a few. If you recall, we had a slide up with a variety of projects. We had about 24 projects up that we were anticipating for 2012. If we take a look at just 8 of those, we're in excess of $520,000 in permit revenue fees for that. So we're anticipating that that revenue, which most of those plans are in front of us for review right now, would cover that cost.
Very good. So I'll move the resolution 2012-41.
Second.
And this is completely as needed. So if work drops off, we don't continue to have any obligation towards this contractor.
Correct, and that was something that we felt was important, that we weren't putting a specific timeline on for an obligation for Keystone's part or from our part, that as we get through these, and if things fall off later in the summer into the fall, that we can scale that back without having to come back in front of you, and that we can manage that in-house.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any other commissioner comment? Any staff or public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
I move the authorization, or I move authorization resolution 2012-38 for SD number 2012-D-01 final for Agnes Irwin School to place temporary facilities to allow relocation while approved development occurs at 295 South Lathan Avenue in Rosemont.
And I would like to disclose that I have a conflict of interest in that my husband's company sells a small amount of equipment to Agnes Irwin, so I will not participate in this discussion or vote. And Don, if you don't mind calling the vote.
Is there a second? Mr. Higgins, second. Very well. Any commissioner comment? Any public comment? Very well. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Vote carries 4-0. The next item is adoption. I'll move the adoption of ordinance 20-12-02 of Radnor Township, Delaware County, Pennsylvania, amending Chapter 120 for bathing places.
Second.
Any commissioner comment?
Just, Kevin, is this your domain?
Yes, it is.
What is the reason we're doing this now? I assume we already have an ordinance that covers lifeguards at public bathing places.
We do have an ordinance. This is to make our ordinances consistent with the state level to require certain number of lifeguards at all of the facilities. Currently, most of our recreational and commercial pools meet the state requirements, but they don't meet their local requirements, and that we're not consistent. So this is basically making our ordinances consistent with the state ordinances. And again, 99% of our pools are compliant. This is just to get the remaining few up to the state codes and make our codes consistent with the state codes.
So this applies, or has been applying, to universities, high schools, summertime outdoor pools. What about fitness clubs? Are they covered?
Correct. Yes, all commercial pools.
Okay. So there's really nothing, there's no public pool in the township that currently is exempt or would be exempt after this is enacted?
Not exempt. There's one or two that are not compliant with the code because our code doesn't require it. But once this ordinance would be in, then they would all be required to
Can you
comply.
give us an example of what that non-compliance is?
It's regarding the number of lifeguards, and I think the particular concern was at wading pools, where our ordinance would not require a lifeguard at a wading pool, and this ordinance then would require that any pool has to be observed via a lifeguard.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioner comment? Any staff or public comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
And I'll put a question to Bob. Bob, what's the particular event for which you're asking John Rice to attend the zoning hearing board, or Kevin, is that you?
Yes. If you recall, 40 Luella Court, we had a zoning interpretation that was made regarding the impervious surfaces. That interpretation has been appealed to the zoning hearing board by a group of residents.
Very good. So I'll move the authorization for John Rice to attend the zoning hearing board meeting on behalf of the township.
Any commissioner comment? Any staff or public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
And then I'll move that we accept HARB 2012-04 for 301 Midland Avenue in Wayne, new roof and column above existing steps at side entrance.
Moved and seconded. Do we have any commissioner comment? Any staff or public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
And the final item is I'll move that we accept, or that I'll move for HARB 2012-05 40 Luella Court, Wayne, exterior renovations, listed 1 through 4.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we have some commissioner comment on this?
Well, I think the issues are all resolved as far as the legality, well, as far as the substance of the development are concerned. As we know, I voted against the development twice when it came up before us. I've looked at the questions here that HARB has approved, the specific request of the developer to, there are 3 of them: enclose the porches on the west end of the building, remove the existing coal chute, which basement access, remove 2 existing at-grade windows and the Bilco basement access on the north side of the building, and then relocate and replace 2 windows on the north side of the building. So I'm going to vote in favor of this. I don't see a significant reason not to.
I also defer to our HARB, who considered this quite carefully, and they recommended that we approve these changes. I do have one quick question that came up during the HARB board, and I don't think it was answered. There was a question about the roof line protrusion. There's a protrusion in the roof line that may or may not occur because of an elevator being installed. And at that point, I think the conversation went nobody had gone up to the roof yet, and they weren't sure whether it would go more than the sun roof or not. And I'm just wondering if somebody has made that determination yet, or...
My name's Tim Wentz. I'm the architect for the project, Gate 17 Architecture. I want to show you a picture that we took of the roof. There's an existing light well that's in the building in which we are going to place the elevator. You can see that there are walls that range from 30 inches high, and then there is a shed roof there, or a pent roof rather, over the actual walls themselves, and there's a ventilator on top of that. The next exhibit shows a drawing of what the elevator shaft is going to look like, and what you will see is that the elevator shaft for its overrun is only going to have to be up 2 feet over the existing roof. You can see that the existing structure is 30 inches high, so that we will be able to have the elevator shaft be within the existing structure, but of course we're going to have to rebuild the whole thing.
So you'll remove this structure that's up there now, and then whatever, the elevator shaft will come up and replace that, basically.
Yes, and then we'll put the same shape roof on it, probably be a standing seam roof.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll put the same shape ventilator on it, which is required for the elevator shafts.
Mm-hmm. And that'll be, so this was 34 feet, that'll be 36 feet?
No, it's 34 inches.
Oh, 34 inches.
Excuse me, it's 30 inches
Right.
is the height of the walls of the existing structure. Our elevator shaft only requires 24.
Oh, I see.
So in essence, it would be inside of this existing structure.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, if I could add, we had received this from the applicant with these drawings and pictures. After that comment was made at the last HARB meeting, I pulled the applicant aside and asked him to clarify that. The next day, we did receive this information. We can only go off of what we have in front of us now, but when the building plans are submitted, we will be verifying, in fact, that the elevator shaft does fit within that footprint and is no higher. So we have to go off of what we're being told right now, but when the building plans come in, we will be verifying that there's no change outside of the parameters of that existing structure on the roof.
Yeah, and that brings up Greg Pritchard had asked an interesting question during that last HARB meeting, and he just kind of wondered out loud how, what kind of mechanism we have to assure adherence to that these, that the tile's going to be the same, that the things that they're trying to replicate will actually match. And I don't know the answer to that. Do we have someone go out and inspect, or, there's no HARB enforcement officer. So
There is not, but that would be handled through our department, through my department, in that when the building plans are coming in, we're making sure that all of the conditions that were imposed, whether it's through the HARB certificates or through the conditions in the resolution to approve the land development plans, are met.
Okay.
So there were pretty specific items with regards to the windows, with regards to the roof and the doors, and with the certificate of appropriateness for these other items that we're going to be going back and making sure that the building plans match the displays that were presented in front of you and in front of HARB.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have any other commissioner comment? Any staff comment or any public comment?
Hello, Jim Schneller. I am a resident of St. David's and live within 2,000 feet of the location. As you know, I've had some comments along the way, and I ask you to table this because I believe the HARB recommendation is a little bit too wide open. And this is because they have approved an enclosing of a porch. The porch on the left side of this building has been an open veranda to the memory of all in the township. I'm certain that the Historical Society agrees that it is a valuable component. The HARB chose not to take a hard look at this. They've apparently abandoned the aesthetic aspect to that extent, and I'm disappointed. I think a lot of residents are disappointed. And the big reason, of course, also is that the original building had an open porch for 2/3 of the front length. That's been reduced to that short porch, which matches, give or take, the width of Luella Court, whereas it used to be a really expansive porch. We're losing the open feeling of the architecture. So I'd ask you to please take another look at this, table it. Perhaps the applicant would discuss some kind of change, and we have a better building. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for your comments. I'd just like to beg to differ on the note that HARB didn't consider this carefully. I watched that meeting, and it seemed to me they considered it, enclosing the porch, quite carefully, and they felt that it was an adaptive reuse and that it was in keeping with the building. So I'm quite comfortable in the analysis that they did, and I defer to their expertise, which they have plenty of. But thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the vote, unless we have any other public comment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. All right, next we have public safety, and there's nothing to report. Then we have Parks and Recreation. Commissioner Nagel is not here, so I'm going to give his report. There are a few items. First, there's a spring extravaganza community event, which is this coming Sunday, April 1st, at 1 p.m. at Clemacrone Park. It's going to have a band, an egg hunt, bounce houses, a Easter spring bunny, the Phillies mascot, Screwball, and more. During spring break, we also have several camps available next week. Chess camp will be held April 2nd to the 5th at the Willows Mansion. The soccer camp will be held April 2nd to 6th at Ditmar, and you can register through our website. Next, we have registration for Radnor Day Camp and Summer Tot Lot is open now, and registration for these two programs are online. And you can check it out at www.radnorrecreation.com. All other summer camp registration and details will be available April 30th. And then finally, the Radnor Township newsletter spring edition will be coming in your mailbox after April 2nd, so keep a lookout. And that's it for Parks and Recreation. Next, we have library, which is my purview, and two announcements I have. The first is that their gala, their annual fundraising gala, is coming up on April 20th. This is the invitation that went into mailboxes last week. It is at the beautiful Ardrossan Estate, and I encourage everyone to go. Last year it was just a magnificent event. That's just a gorgeous setting, and it's a great cause. If you did not receive an invitation in the mail, go ahead and get on their website. It's the first thing that comes up on their homepage, and you can click on and download the invitation. And I encourage everyone to attend. It's a great way to support your library, and also as a bonus, get to enjoy the splendor of one of the very last magnificent mainline estates that is still intact, that we get to enjoy in this township. And then secondly, we have some openings on the Board of Trustees for the library. If you're interested in serving the library, there are two spots open. One is on the board itself. It's a 3-year term, and you would apply through the library. Nomination forms are online, so you just get on that front page of the website and click on the nomination form and send that in. The due date for that is April 2nd, so you have to move quickly. The other position that's open up is the township representative to the library board, which is chosen by this board as opposed to the library staff. And again, it's a 3-year term, and if you are interested in serving in that position, send your resume to Bob Zinkowski and indicate your interest, and we will meet you and send you on your way. And that is it for library. Next, we have Public Health. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you. Under Public Health, just mention that the Board of Health and the EAC are both currently reviewing the use of glyphosate in the township. This is a weed killer, and I expect the Board of Health to come back to the Board of Commissioners with their findings. And I believe the EAC is also looking at this issue. So we'll get something from them about the use of that herbicide. No further report under Public Health.
Okay, do we have any old business?
I have some old business. I just want to get caught up on the rock slope project, the SEPTA property on Conestoga Road. This is something we've been looking at for many years now, and I'm trying to find the humor in it because I never imagined it'd take this long just to clean up an area. But just want to stoke that fire, Mr. Zinkowski, and if there's anything we can do to try to move this along. I know we're waiting on SEPTA and PICO and Miracles to get something going here, but we do have this $10,000 grant from Greg Vitale's office that will probably expire at the end of June, and I want to do anything we can to make sure that doesn't happen.
Sure. And I know that Steve and Dave are working on this as well. I think at the long term, the delay is good. I know it's difficult for you waiting for that, but based on the 10,000 in the small area, we'd be able to make an impact to where with PICO and SEPTA, in my opinion, maybe it's worked out well with some of the work that's taken place there, where I think we could possibly get some buy-in based on the reconstruction and the work that's had to been done to the falling slope there as well. So I know that Steve has been pushing on them hard, and I think at the end of the day we might see something that really is the impact, I think, Commissioner, that you're looking for in that particular area and the neighborhood has been looking for. Steve, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, we are trying. I think the manager summed it up nicely. The solicitor did come back to us. The SEPTA has some concern about one of the outfall pipes there, and so we're going to go out in the field and try to measure and determine if it's on whose property it's on. Is it the Rosemont Business Campus or their property? And hopefully that won't muddy any of the water, but we will go out and take care of that.
No pun intended. Right.
Okay. And Commissioner, just to allay your fears about the grant, we have received an extension for that grant, so we will not lose it even if nothing's done prior to June.
That's good. Okay. Well, let's pretend it hasn't been extended. We'll work really hard to get it done, so I appreciate your effort on that. Another issue, I'll consider this old business. I've brought to the, and this may be a policy for the board, I brought to the attention of township administration, there are a few properties within the township that consistently over time have not met the criteria for the property maintenance ordinance. And there certainly is hardship in these properties, but in some cases, I feel like the township's hands are tied. We don't have a lot we can do to encourage, in some cases, like an absent property owner, to do maintenance on their property. But I think what I'm just going to put out there, and also ask John Rice maybe to come back to us with just some general advice of what are the options we can do to make sure that this property maintenance gets done, even on properties where the property owner is absent or incapacitated in any way, and to make sure that these properties don't become a major headache for the residents. I think this is a very small problem for the township, but it's a really big problem for the neighbors. So I have, in my ward, I have two properties in particular. I won't name the addresses, but in general, these are giant hardships for the neighbors who live adjacent to these properties. In some cases, the property owners have been cutting the grass for a number of years. And my advice to them was, if you do that, we cannot cite the properties, but if you do not do it, then we have the opportunity to enforce our ordinance. But that doesn't really help them solve the problem. So I'm just putting it out there publicly. I think it would be important at some point for this township to have an ordinance or to have a resolution or something that authorizes the township to take any legal means possible to make sure that these properties are maintained in addition to the ordinance, maybe that, I don't know if that's a lien on property or
Here-
what choices we have.
Commissioner Fisher, I mean, Radnor's not alone with these types of properties. Every municipality's got a handful of them. You had one that we dealt with last summer that involved, and I don't remember, Steve, the address, but it was owned by a bank or a lender in Texas, and it wasn't being mowed. There wasn't any structural issues, I don't think, with the building. But we went out, Township actually went out and did some mowing. And then we gave notice to the lender in Texas. And this is a property maintenance requirement that we were going to do that. We ended up liening the property, I think maybe $1,300 or $1,400, something like that. And then the property sold. We got paid off, I think, in the last 60 days of that lien. That's sort of the model. Otherwise, you can spend a lot of time, and I can sue property owners that are out of state, in state, or just absent, and you're going to spend a lot of money on those types of costs and maybe not really get anywhere. So there is a little bit of self-help, and you have the ability to do that up to a point, you know, to do cosmetics, maybe cutting grass, securing a building, and then leaning it, and then you sit and wait to get paid. Beyond that, it would get very expensive to deal with some of these properties that are major headaches in neighborhoods. But, I mean, we can look at some other options. There's a state law dealing with blighted properties that actually neighborhoods can petition to take ownership of a piece of property. It's almost like a private condemnation type of a statute. Municipalities can do it. But again, you're buying a problem when you do that.
Okay.
Maybe if I can, Commissioners, just to add on to John's point, one of the things that I know we're going to be looking at here is putting more teeth into our property maintenance area, because I think there's some areas in which we should be able to enforce, but we don't have the codes behind us to be able to do that. I think this is going to become a problem in the township. I think issues that we have recognized with those homeowners who like to collect items is going to become a bigger problem here in the township. But also when we get into the exterior maintenance of gutters and all those types of things, and to be able to put some teeth behind that and give our code staff that ability to be able to go out and be aggressive in some areas where we don't have that latitude to do right now. So I think that is something that we're going to work on and try to get something here to John to be able to look at, but then also get to the Board of Commissioners here sometime soon, which would allow Kevin and his department a lot more strength and give them a lot more ability to be able to go out and do what's necessary, especially in the homes I think, Commissioner Fisher, you speak about as well.
I appreciate that. And I do want to stress that in some cases, there is hardship, and when that hardship is recognized, I personally have done things to mobilize volunteers to try to help with those residents. But in some cases, it's not really hardship; it's choice, and in some cases, it's just an absentee owner not even aware of the property being neglected. So I appreciate that. No further old business from me.
I have a little bit of old business / new business. Over the last several months, we've had several special meetings, as everyone knows, and we've started to address some looming issues such as pensions and our long-term liabilities and our staffing and personnel and our capital needs. It's been tremendously helpful to all of us as commissioners. It's also been very helpful, I think, for our community to understand these larger issues that we're dealing with. And I believe at this point there's some consensus on our board that we would like to see some of this very good information and give and take that's going on start to be incorporated into and translated into some funding models and financial models with an eye towards our 2013 budget. So I would like to request that process start in our administration. I'm not sure if you'd like a motion to that effect or, all right, I'm going to go ahead and move that this board requests administration to begin the process of culminating and taking all the information we're getting from these meetings and beginning to forecast and do some financial modeling for the 2013 budget.
I'll second that.
All right, any other commissioner comment on that?
I'll
Any?
just emphasize that we're getting a very clear picture of what were in prior years undisclosed, in some cases unfunded liabilities. We now know what the liabilities are. In fact, we're getting to see them with very good clarity. And at this point, once we know that, we need to do something about it. So I agree with Commissioner Schaefer that we need administration to draft proposals even of how we can fund these various liabilities over the long term. So I appreciate any work by staff on that moving forward.
Okay, any staff or public comment on that motion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. And I think we're on to our favorite motion of the night. Yeah. Oh, public participation. Well, that's the favorite. Do we have any public comment? General.
Jim Schneller, St. David's. I noted that earlier the League of Women Voters had a request or an urging for action on some kind of human relations ordinance. I wanted to note that Radnor is blessed with a referendum capability in our home rule charter, and that this provides an open avenue for any group or special interest group that would hope to have an ordinance or just a resolution. Naturally, we're all interested in civil rights, but I wanted to point out to you that use of our solicitor and therefore our tax money for something that no resident has ever come forth to request is perplexing to me, and I think to a lot of residents.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Now the favorite motion?
I move we adjourn. Second.
All right.